everyone. It's Dr. Loyola here, and this is just a quick video about your geolocative prototypes, just to make sure that everyone's kind of on the same page for what that assignment requires, expectations, and all that good stuff. Nothing I'm saying here of substance in terms of requirements or anything else for the assignment is different from what's in the assignment sheet. So if you don't have the streaming or time, or whatever else to watch this video, that's fine. You can find all this information in the assignment sheet attached to this assignment on Moodle. But if you do find it helpful when I kind of walk you through the assignments as I would typically do in class, then this video is taking the place of that work. So okay, so let's go in and just kind of jump right in. So this is, as I said, for your geolocative prototype. And the purpose of this is, well, one, it's our third type of interactive fiction over the course of this semester. It is also the one where we've been working with using the real world and the built environment as an interface for storytelling, and as to create an immersive experience right within that world. If we were not online and we were able to freely move about, we would be building this as a mobile narrative on the model of something like Zombies Run or The Silent History. But this has shifted quite a bit because we are online. So instead of being that actual mobile narrative experience, this is going to be a true prototype, in the sense of prototype where it can mean model, and kind of a proof of concept. So a true prototype demonstrating through other tools what you would have done, or what you would do if you were building a fully mobile narrative. So in terms of your design process and your creative space, I really want you to kind of imagine that you could move your audience through the world. You could do all those kinds of world as interface and immersive experience things, but you're just not going to be actually creating that final product. So what you will be doing instead is a map-based prototype that will be accessed via a computer from anywhere using Google Tour Builder. So this is a pretty user-friendly product created by Google, as most of their suite of tools are. It doesn't require major complex coding or anything like that. And instead, it kind of helps you create narratives similar to the LA Flood project that are built through the Google Maps interface. You can use multimedia, you can use text, you can do all kinds of stuff to create a location-based story. But of course, your audience will be sitting at home or on their phone or whatever, just going through this on through that Google Maps interface rather than through the real world. So the story that you tell is, actually, let me back up. So with Google Tour Builder, then you're going to be prototyping or modeling what you would build, this kind of creative narrative experience, if it were truly mobile. Okay, so I'm going to keep repeating that, but just keep that in mind, right? That this is a model, this is a proof of concept, this is not the actual kind of final project, final product. And this one and our AR, so our remote prototypes that you'll be doing are going to be kind of the farthest from your final product as anything else. So that's just kind of a bummer of working as we are, but that's kind of where we are. So the story that you tell with this prototype, as with the rest of them, there should be like a clear narrative bound here. It should be fictional. And the story itself, though, really is entirely up to you. But just a few kind of places where you might look. First, you'll notice that I think all of our example texts have given a kind of like alternate version of our world. So either an alternate history, an alternate future, or an alternate present. An alternate, kind of broadly speaking, so a kind of what if this happens, how might it play out scenario. So of course, Zombie Run was like the biggest leap from here, because it's like, what if the zombie apocalypse was in our backyard? And The Silent History is also a pretty far leap, where it's what if kids suddenly couldn't speak anymore. But LA Flood is like, what if this natural disaster happened in LA? How would people react, right? And that's a much more kind of realistic alternative story to tell, right? So if you're kind of interested in exploring that space, that's a great space that the geolocative model really lends itself to doing that really effectively and richly, right? Because it's creating an alternate story overlaid in the real world, and that just kind of works really well. Another thing that you could do is you could retell a story that you already know really well, maybe a familiar fairy tale or something like that, and you can set it in our world, right? So what would happen if you picked some houses in your neighborhood to be like the Three Little Pigs houses, right? Or what kind of journey might Little Red Riding Hood travel along if she were traveling through your neighborhood on her way to her grandmother's house, right? And where would the wolf come from, and so on. So you could imagine something like that, and that might be, you can think of that as even like on the model of those, like the true story of, whatever fairy tale kind of thing. But that's another way that you might approach it. And then a final way that you could approach it is to tell a story that's actually set on a different world, a completely imagined other world, whether that's something like Mars or Jupiter, or even just completely fantastical, as in the model of something like Game of Thrones or Harry Potter, right? And so you could tell a story that takes place in a completely other world with different rules and different expectations and so on, and then imagine places in your local environment that could be made to feel strange, right? So how could you take a swamp or a front lawn, a patch of grass, right, something, and make it feel strange by adding different multimedia or different text. So those are some other options, of course, that you have for how you might approach this story. Though again, the story itself is entirely up to you. So if you want to do something that's not any of those three things, have at it. That's totally your prerogative here. So in addition to the narrative itself, in terms of quantitative requirements, your prototype must have at least 10 locations on the map. So if this were mobile, again, there must be 10 distinct places that your user visits or travels to. And you need to use a combination of multimedia, so text, image, sound, maybe even video, to create as immersive an experience, even within this model, as possible. And some of these things, right, because one of the things we've talked about when creating an immersive experience has to do with controlling or limiting what kinds of content your audience actually takes in. So some of these, like some of the soundtracks or even some of the images, might be things that you would have used in that mobile environment, not just for the model, but do think richly and expansively about that, since we are in the space of modeling. So there might be, for instance, images of places that wouldn't be in the mobile version because that would just be where the user was, right? So maybe an image of like a bench that they would sit on, that you would need to include in the model to demonstrate that, but that of course wouldn't actually have to be in the mobile version. And then as usual, you'll do a designer statement, and this should do all the normal things. You have a series of questions to respond to on the assignment sheet. So none of these are surprising, but they're the usual kinds of: what were your goals? How did you use the tools to try to achieve those goals or try to model those goals? How did you use your environment? What would you do? What would you specifically change if this were the mobile version, right? And so on. And that should be expansive and critical and like really kind of digging into your design process and telling me what it is that you did and what kind of vision you're imagining for this whole thing. The designer statement is especially important on this particular model because, of course, we're really prototyping, right? I'm not going to get to have that mobile experience that you would have designed. So please take this time to really tell me about it and tell me about everything you were conceptualizing. If you go over the suggested 750 words, that's fine. That's totally fine. So right now we are going to still plan to do playtesting. We'll do a virtual model of playtesting that I'm still working out the details of. So I will post that to Moodle when that happens, but you can look for that in the middle of next week. So Wednesday or Thursday of next week. For submission, you'll submit the link to your tour on Moodle. Make sure you get the share link, right? This is a Google Tools kind of thing, so there should be like a file share option. You cannot just take the link from your location bar. All right, let me say that again. You cannot take the link from your location bar. It will not open. All that that's going to do on my end is take me to my Google space. All right, it's not going to give me yours. So make sure that you find the share link, just as you need to do for Google Docs. And all of this is due April 5th at midnight. But just as a quick note, The date on Moodle says Monday, April 6th at 3:04 a.m. And that is because the provost has asked us not to have things due at 11:59 on Sunday. But since Sunday was the day that worked best for this class to reset our week, I've just moved it a few hours later on Monday morning. So you do have that time, right? There's not a secretly, like that if you're at like midnight on Monday or 2 a.m. on Monday, that I'm going to count you as late. That is just, I'm going to maintain the Sunday at midnight just for your sense of knowing when it is, right? So it's not Monday really, it's really Sunday night. Okay. I know that's a little bit confusing. So if you just plan for Sunday night, you will be good. Okay, so as with all of your prototypes, this carries a 10% weight for your final grade in this class. And the grading on this assignment itself will be weighted as 20% for the narrative, right? That there is an obvious narrative here, even if it's just the beginning of one, and that narrative is really kind of grappling with physical space and how to use physical space in storytelling. So that's 20%. 50% is for the prototype actually hitting all the requirements. So 10 locations, mix of multimedia, focus on creating immersive environments, and so on. And then 30% is for the designer statement itself. So that gets us through this assignment. I look forward to seeing what you all build. As always, you can feel free to reach out to me with any questions, any problems that you run into, and we will have another virtual office hours session where we can discuss this in more detail or face-to-face next week on Wednesday at our usual time, 2 to 4 via Microsoft Teams. So I look forward to hearing from you and to seeing your work. Continue to take care, everyone.